Okay, great. So I promised I'd start at 7:30 for the people that are here. And I'm Louise Larson, if you don't know me, and I am going to start. I thought I would just start. There's a lot of little bits and snippets of news in the college admissions and higher ed world. So I thought I would kind of give a lot of fragmented pieces of information about what I'm seeing in the admission cycle right now, and then dig into, and the admission cycle right now is sort of challenging, and then dig into what can you be doing right now if you have a 9th, 10th, or 11th grader to do what is in your control and manage this. So in admissions news, Dolly Parton's Dollywood business has offered full 100% tuition, books, full reimbursement for any higher education that her employees are doing. So I thought that was fantastic. I listened to Andrew Palumbo, is the head of admissions at Worcester Polytechnic Institute, and he has a podcast called Inside Admissions. And I'll tell you right now, probably the best thing to have for this webinar is paper and pencil, because I'm not great with like graphics and giving you pretty slides of information. So I'm happy to backtrack and fill in any holes for you at the end. But Andrew Palumbo is the head of admissions at Worcester Polytech, and he has a podcast. And I listened to 2 of them recently, and he did one with Ned Johnson. And I would highly recommend it because it talks about the importance of parents really letting go and really letting kids and detaching and letting the kid do more of this, and talks about the reasons why far more eloquently than I ever could. So the Ned Johnson piece, if you have a 9th or a 10th grader and you're wondering, oh, they're not doing well, or they're not, what are they not doing? And I need to get them doing some stuff, and great resource on how to manage that. The other piece that he had on there, he put a piece on about the new digital SAT, and he had 3 guests. He had Akil Bello, who was a very prominent test prep expert. He had Alicia Oglesby, who's a pretty well-known high school guidance counselor in Philadelphia, and he had Lee Weisenberger, who runs admissions and financial aid at Bates College up in Maine. And he had them all on talking about the new digital SAT. And if you are worried about the SAT or know your kid isn't a good test taker, it's really worth listening to, because they talk about what a smaller role testing plays in admissions than people might realize. So if you have a child, if you have a kid that's just, they're going to do pretty well and it's not a big deal, great. But if you have a kid that is, maybe you're a little more concerned or they're stressed, really great information about how to manage that. So test optional is, I would say, for the class of 23, everything's going to be pretty much test optional. For juniors, for the freshmen and sophomores, more shall be revealed on that. I don't know. But if you have a junior, I would anticipate almost every school will be test optional, with the exception of Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina public schools are requiring test scores for the class of 2023. So that is the juniors, the class of 23 is kind of riding the back of the pandemic comet, where everything is still test optional. That stay? I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't have a crystal ball. California's gone test blind, and I shouldn't say that. The University of California has gone test blind. There's 500,000 high school graduates in California. Every school in the country wants some of their business. And though they know that those California kids kind of are in an environment like I don't really need to test, because I could go to UC and not test. So I would just say that when the UCs are test blind, so goes probably a lot of testing, but that remains to be seen for 9th and 10th graders.
Liar.
Okay. So the Common App had 1.3 million individual applicants this year, and that is up 13%. So when they say like last year, like there were so many applications, and were there more individual applicants or more or less applicants sending more applications? This year, for sure, there were more people using the Common App. So that's just an interesting statistic. So it is what is 21st. We've got like 10 big days ahead of us in the college admission world. The most selective schools will be announcing their admissions decisions in the next 10 days for the most part. There's a couple schools that have pushed into early April. So we're in the thick of it, and the news is coming fast and furious. I will share this statistic with you that applications since 2019, applications are up 25% at colleges with a sub 50% admit rate. So let's dig into some of the stuff that has come out that schools have shared about their admission stats. So I kind of like this range of schools I'm talking about, because I'm talking about everything under the sun for the next couple schools and statistics that I'm sharing. Florida State went from 66,000 applications last year to 74,000 this year. That was never an easy school to get into, but when they get 8,000 more applications, it gets harder. Boston College. All right, Boston College in 2020 had 30,000 applications. In 2022, they had 40,484 applications. That they're up 36%. They introduced early decision in 2019. In this past admission cycle, they had 4,428 early decision applicants between early decision 1 and early decision 2, and they filled half the class in that early decision round. So that means there's 36,000 kids that have applied for about 1,150 spots at Boston College. Now, they don't yield 100%, but that's not a lot of spots for a lot of kids that have applied there. Their global admit rate is down to 16%. So they've gone from like, maybe 30% in 2019 to 16%. And if you pull out the early decision numbers, it's probably lower. Johns Hopkins, they admitted 822 students early decision and 1,586 in the regular decision round. They were at 37,150 applications. Their admit rate went from 9% to 6.4%. So it was already quite selective. It's only gotten more so. University of Southern California. They actually had a tiny decrease in applications. They have 69,000 applications, but they were oversubscribed the past 2 years. And normally they let in like 9,600 kids, like just under 10,000. They only admitted 8,200 kids this year. In 2020, they had 59,000 apps, so they were up 10,000. So Northeastern, no one has played the early decision game like Northeastern University, and they have gone, if you went to high school in the 80s, Northeastern was a commuter school with parking lots with potholes. Now, they went in 2020, they had 64,459 applications. In 2022, they had over 90,000 applications. They admitted in 2020, between early decision, early action, and all their different ways to apply. In 2020, they admitted 13,199 students at a 20% admit rate. 2022, they had between ED1 and ED2, they had 4,150 ED applications. They admitted 2,220. They filled a large part, 53% of their class from those numbers. And they admitted a grand total of 8,320 students. Their global admit rate went to 9%, and the regular decision admit rate is 7%. I dread to see these numbers, because if you're not applying early decision, the regular decision round at these schools is like really trying to fit, you know, through the eye of a needle, because they're taking, you know, half. Some schools are taking 2/3 early decision. And, you know, the ED admit rate, I mean, at Northeastern, 4,150 applied and 2,200 got in. I mean, that's pretty good odds in your favor of getting in, but it's not in the regular round. So, so in the state school world, I saw a big shift in how schools were admitting kids. I saw schools that used to really be generous or have a reasonable threshold in the early action round, deferring a lot of kids. One of those schools was the University of South Carolina. And I found out that South Carolina, I believe, had the greatest growth. No state had a greater increase in their students applying. South Carolina had a growth of 60% of growth in South Carolina applicants nationwide. Like no state had more growth in their applicant pool than South Carolina. My guess is a lot of those South Carolina kids applied to University of South Carolina. So they had an in-state glut, I'm guessing. University of Vermont, same thing. Early action used to be kind of a friendly way to get a nice yes before Christmas. Early action deferrals left and right. And to stay, this was new, to stay in the applicant pool for regular decision, you had to write another essay, or you weren't in the regular decision applicant pool. Now, you might say, oh, what is all this coming from? Well, Jay Jacobs is the new vice provost of enrollment at UVM. He came about a year ago, and he came from the University of Miami, which has done a lot to amp up their numbers. So he came in, and my guess is they're implementing early decision next year. And they're going to try and, I mean, UVM's a public Ivy, and they're going to try and you know, play the numbers game too a little bit. 5 years ago, if you had applied to Tulane University and you had any kind of good GPA, you would be in by Thanksgiving with a $30,000 merit scholarship. And then Tulane brought in a guy named Sanjay Dattagupta, and he changed all that. And now Tulane has almost a single-digit admit rate. And I am here to tell you that Northeastern just hired Sanjay Dattagupta. So now the guy from Tulane is going to Northeastern. It's already like a single-digit admit rate. So I don't know what to say, except this is what I'm seeing, is it's almost like an arms race. All right, so shifting gears a little bit, you might have heard a news about University of California, Berkeley, and it was like a ping pong match, because there was a homeowners group that sued Berkeley. Berkeley was they were 25% over their growth plan. And the homeowners association, not homeowners, but the community association sued and said that they couldn't keep growing the school, and they had to cut the freshman class by thousands. And that was a big crisis. Like, they did this at the end of January, like the applications were in. And the case ping pong back and forth. Berkeley was told they had to cut the numbers, and they went back, and the state legislature said they didn't have to, win back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Finally, Berkeley did not have to cut their numbers, and they made some kind of concessions that they would build more dorms but the UCs are reducing their out-of-state population. They're under a mandate to get it from 23 down to 18%. So those schools, which were always challenging to get into, are going to be more challenging to get it to if you're out of state. So that segs into the next thing that I would want to talk about, which is something that is a concern in the back of my mind, and maybe I'm wrong, but colleges, one of the driving denominators is beds. They can scale food, they can scale classes, they can scale a lot, but a lot of campuses, and it you see it with Berkeley, they have a fixed amount of beds. And if you have a four-year residential campus, all the more so. So one of the things that is a hard ceiling on their admissions is beds. So one of the things you might see, and they're businesses first. I mean, if you've been on a campus, you know that they care about their students, they care about their mission, but their number one priority is self-proliferation. So one of the things that happens is you can get a second semester acceptance from a college where you get a spring admit college. Now that can a spring admit to go to the college as a freshman, but you go second semester. Why does that happen? Well, two reasons. One is they don't have to include you in the first year statistics. So when they calculate all their first year statistics, they don't have to put you in there. So maybe if you pull their averages down, maybe if there's some reason they like you and they want you in their campus, but they don't want you in their fall statistics, that's one reason. The other reason is in December, there's a lot of kids that graduate in December. There's also kids that go abroad for spring semester. So colleges admit spring acceptances because they are trying to fill beds. And I am concerned about everything going on in Europe. I think that there's a whole tier of kids that might go abroad that don't. Now, during the pandemic, there was a whole tier of kids that didn't go abroad, but there was a whole tier of international kids that didn't come. So it was kind of like a net zero. But I think the international kids are going to want to keep coming here. And there's a whole segment of the world that I don't know if abroad programs are going to run, or if they do run, people are going to want to send their kids to them. I don't know if I would be sending one of my kids to, Prague or somewhere in Eastern Europe. I don't know. So that is something that I'm wondering for, the class of 23, 24, 25, if that could tighten up some of these numbers even more. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But it's just something that I'm kind of looking at and going, well, these fixed beds are going to be, all the kids don't go abroad in the spring. There's no room for incoming kids. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about what you can control, what is in your control. And I listened to Jenny Ricard is the CEO and head chief honcho at the Common App. And I listened to her and she had hold on a second, let me get the exact quote. It was so good. She said, and I just love this. She said, you have much more control over this situation than you might think. And I love that. So let's talk about, you're sitting here and I'm giving you all these numbers and you're like, oh no, what does all this mean? Well, it means it's a very dynamic situation, but let's talk about, I've had a lot of 10th and 11th grade families getting out on the road doing visits. And I thought I would talk about doing college visits, how to do college visits, when to do college visits. And then I was thinking about that, and there's no way to really talk about doing college visits without talking about demonstrated interest, because demonstrated interest really matters at some schools. And when you're on their campus, it's a way to show it. So if you have a helicopter and don't have a job, you can just sign off right now. You don't need to listen to this because you can just get everywhere you need to go without issue. But if you have a job and other kids, and those kids all do activities, and you start to pull out your calendar and say, when are we going to go see colleges? And you start to go, oh boy, there's, you try to figure out when to go to see these schools, and it's not easy. Colleges are basically open from the end of August to early December and the end of January to early May. So if you're sitting here and you've basically got 6 weeks to try to get on a campus if you have a 10th or 11th grader, if you want to see it with the students there. Now, you can certainly go see colleges when the students aren't there, but you're not going to have as full a feel of the place. And I just had a kid, he just went to see a little leafy liberal arts school, and it was so great because he said, I love it. I love the town. I love the campus. I love the whole thing, but I did not like the vibe of those students. And I want that type of campus, but a different vibe. So it's important to kind of, if he had seen that campus in the summer, he would have probably liked it a lot and not realized that maybe those kids aren't just, they're not doing what he wants to do, and he just didn't like the vibe, which is great. That he had that information. So getting kids on campus in 10th and 11th grade is great. 9th grade is a little young, but if you're traveling, if you're going to, somewhere that's not easy for you to get to, I would absolutely go see schools in 9th grade. So when you are doing this, it is important to not be a stealth visitor. You could show up on a campus and they will never know you were there. And I've seen I don't even know what the data analytics are, but it's almost like, a college has like a timeline of you, and you can see it all the dots, all the times that you engage, like that an applicant engaged. So you could go visit a campus twice and never, and be a stealth visitor. You don't want to do that. So let's talk about how you do this. The first thing is, it doesn't even matter what campus you go see, because first thing is like, well, I don't know what campus to go to. Go to whatever campus you can go to. It doesn't matter. You're not trying to find the campus that your kid likes. You're trying to see something small, something large, something urban, something suburban, a public, a private, something maybe really selective, something less selective. Just go see what is near you, because they will get a range. And I got a call this week from a family up in New Haven, and they were like, we don't know what to go see. And the kid was very, very high achieving. I said, go see Connecticut College, University of Connecticut, Trinity, Yale, Quinnipiac, Sacred Heart, and Fairfield. Now this kid would probably die. Like, I don't want to go see those schools. I'm not suggesting those are the right schools for this kid by any stretch, but if he goes and sees those schools, he's going to know, I loved a big state flagship. I hated a big state flagship. You're going to get so much information just going and seeing whatever is near you. And you can take that information and extrapolate before you start getting on an airplane or driving 12 hours. You can take that information and start to drive your decisions for when you do travel of what you're going to see. So there was one other thing I wanted to say. I'll tell you this, kids are a little, they're not as definitive always about what they like. The teenagers know what they don't like. And if you go see 3 campuses and they didn't like any of them, that's okay. It might feel like you're not succeeding or finding something that they like, but the more you find out what they don't like, the more you can find, seek out things that they might like. All right, so how do you do this? So if you're going somewhere, great. I wouldn't go far. I would, figure out where you are and where can you day trip to see a couple of ranges of campuses. So the first thing is, the traditional way to do this would be to go onto the college's website and sign up for a tour. Now, some schools will say, do you want a tour or an information session or both? I would do both. I don't know, I would do both. When you sign up, that's demonstrated interest. They will have your child's information, your child's email, and you will be, registered as having visited when they if they evaluate demonstrated interest, you'll be there. The other choice would be, maybe you can't get to a tour, but you can be on campus. Absolutely. Send your child into admissions. I'm Johnny Smith. I'm a junior at this high school. I'm here. They will say, oh my gosh, Johnny Smith, here, give us your information. Here's a map. You know, do you have any questions? That exchange of information, they'll say, fill out this little card. That is demonstrated interest. They will know you were there. I've shown up at college campuses on a Sunday and the admissions office is closed, but outside they have a little vestibule with a card and a little campus map, and you can fill out your card and put it in their box. They'll know you were there. So if you're going to take the time to go to any campuses, especially anything that you've traveled any sort of distance to get to, make sure that you've had some sort of physical check-in with this place, because you could visit the campus potentially twice and your child looks like a stealth applicant because there was just no physical connection there. So it's important. In the pandemic era, one of the things that a lot of campuses were doing was some sort of self tour or even a car tour at some campuses. Again, anything you can do. You might not be able to get to the tour, but getting on campus. So let's just say you can't get to the tour. What do you do? My favorite thing to do is to kind of figure out a campus map, figure out what's what on this campus, and find the quad and the student center. And if you can kind of get yourself in between the quad and the student center, you're going to find yourself on the central part of the campus. And student centers always have food, and I would get something to eat and sit down with your kid and look around and see, what does this look like? No, if everybody is in business casual and you like sweats, maybe this isn't your place, or vice versa. Everyone looks like they're an unmade bed, and that's not how your kid rolls. So sitting down and looking around, find a student newspaper, see what they're writing about. What are the editorials saying? Talk to students. They would be, you say, hey, we're here visiting. And there's so many questions you can ask. You can say, what's the spot on campus we should see? What would you think? What type of kid thrives here? What's a fun campus tradition? What would you tell an incoming freshman? You can absolutely talk up. They're usually pretty happy to talk about their schools. The other thing you can do, if you visit a campus, you can absolutely write an email. Your child writes an email to their regional representative. This is usually pretty easy to find online, but if you can't find it online, you can call the admissions office and say, we're from Southern Vermont, and I was on your campus and I wanted to reach out with a question or a comment or tell how much you liked it, or that is demonstrated interest. So let's see if there's anything else I wanted to say about that. I think so once you start to get on campuses, you can take that information from each school and start to extrapolate, small, maybe not so much, or urban, this was too urban, or they liked it, but they wanted more school spirit. So you can start to discern and sift through that. And every time you come out of a campus, you have more information that can hopefully guide you to more and more campuses that they might like. So the other thing is the reality of visiting campuses. You might say, we're going to go to Washington, D.C., or you can see Georgetown Catholic, George Washington, and American. There is a very good chance, despite your best laid plans, that you will have to triage. And that is why it is smart for kids to do some research before you go. Watch some campus tours online. And when you sign up online to watch a campus tour or a campus class or a campus dorm tour, I mean, they have so many different things you can do online now. That is also demonstrated interest. but have your kid read. So if you are somewhere and you have to say, you know what, we don't have time to see Temple and Drexel, which one do you want to go to? That your child has a sense of like, oh, you know what, I really, I'm interested in that Drexel co-op program, so let's go there. There will be, traffic or weather or a flat tire or something will happen despite your best laid plans. The visits, especially if you go alone, are a fabulous one-on-one time with your child. It's really fun to explore. I would suggest most campuses you will like. You'll be like, I wish I could come here, and this is so great. And they're like all-inclusive resorts. I mean, what's not to like in most of these schools? You will like them. I would be really physically neutral and let your child kind of discern, do they like it? If you are on a campus and you are, every bone in your body's going, this kid can't come here. This is not gonna fly. I can't, no. No parent is gonna send their child to a campus that they really are opposed to. So you can kind of wait and say, you know what, we're not comfortable with that for some reason, but just kind of be neutral and let them take it all in. So the next 10 days for the seniors are going to be really big. The changes are dynamic. And I got a call this weekend from a family. I didn't work with them. I just happened to know them. And they had a very high achieving kid who was just had a brutal admission season. And the parent said to me, based on where they have had a yes and no and a yes and no and a wait list, they will not be admitted to any of the remaining schools. And I said, hold that thought. That's logical. And I'm not faulting you. Your logic is correct, but admissions decisions are not logical. And I would say of your 5 remaining schools, you might see a yes. Maybe you won't. I don't know. But you still could see a yes, even though you're saying a less selective school didn't take my kid, therefore this one won't. Maybe they won't get in. I don't know. I hope they do. But if you have, especially if you have an 11th grader, or any age child, really, the end game is to have a list where every school on it's number 1 for you. They're all number 1, and to really love your list, because it doesn't always make sense, and college admissions are always about the college. So the last thing I want to leave you with, Jenny Ricard, who is the head of the Common App, just gave the most wonderful analogy to say, flip the script. Colleges are applying to you. There was only one you. And out of the thousands of colleges in this country, any of their chances of getting you is so minuscule. And, if you are considering 20 colleges, say you're looking at your working list is 20 colleges, you have a 5% admit rate for any of those schools. And to really flip this script and say that you are actually quite selective, and that these colleges are going to have a hard time getting you. I really love that. So that was all I had for tonight. I would be happy to field any questions that anybody would like to ask. I think I'm going to stop the recording now.